Hello everybody. See, today we are having the orientation class for Ethics GS4 paper of UPSC. Now in today's class, we will be discussing basically various methodologies which we will deploy in our test series as well as in our foundation course. But before I go to those, let me introduce myself first. I am Gopalkrishnan Divedi. I am 1993 batch IAS officer of Andhra Pradesh Cadre. I retired a few months back. I was working there as a special chief secretary, Andhra Pradesh. Now after retirement, I started taking mentorship classes for philosophy and ethics GS since last few months. Now we propose to launch full-fledged test series as well as the foundation course for both philosophy as well as ethics from this week onwards. I have YouTube channels also. I just would like to first mention what YouTube channels we have. So for philosophy, we are having de facto philosophy, and for ethics, we are having de facto ethics. On these YouTube channels, you will find a number of videos of earlier classes as well as earlier solutions which I have given to various questions. Now, in this class, we will be taking up basically we will discuss 4 or 5 issues. Now, first we will discuss, basically we are discussing ethics here. So philosophy orientation class I will be taking up next week. So what we are going to discuss today is ethics foundation course as well as test series details. Now in that we will be discussing today a comprehensive strategy for ethics, so which we will take up or deploy in the foundation course. Then we will take up how to write good answers, that is tips for writing good answers. Then third thing which we will discuss today is what is the examiner perspective. So examiner's perspective with respect to evaluation, because if we keep that in mind, we will be able to write answers in a more systematic and correct manner. Now fourth thing also we would like to discuss, particularly last year's question paper I have analyzed, and I believe that there has to be a little change in the strategy of the students, particularly for this year's exam and subsequent years also. So detailed analysis of analysis of 2025 exam paper, because I feel that 2025 exam was a little different from earlier exams. Actually this new trend which UPSC has introduced started from 2023 2024 little more, and then 2025 we have got the clear picture how this trend is going to manifest further. Actually, why all these four things we want to study? Because this will help, number one, foundation course, and number two, test series also. Now, in foundation course, as you know, we will be taking up detailed classes, and in test series basically it will be a writing practice of expected questions. So basically what we will be doing now, foundation course first I will tell, this will be a detailed course for ethics paper, and it will be about 2 months course which we propose to start. Today is 4th, so we will be starting from 11th of June. This will be 2 months course in which we will be telling what to study, how to study, what to write, and how to write. So these four things which I have earlier told, 4 issues, so both are related, interrelated actually. So this will be telling in next 2 months in the foundation course. Now what we will be doing in test series, let me tell you that thing also. Now test series we will start from 15th of this month. So test series (15th of this month), 15th June, and we will be having four sectional tests and 4 full tests. Now as you know, in ethics paper there are 2 basically sections. One is theoretical, other is case studies. So in 4 sectional tests we will be having 2 sectional tests for theoretical questions and 2 for case studies. And 4 full tests will be having both case studies plus theoretical questions combined, just like actual exam paper. So this 8 tests will be conducting in 8 weeks. So we'll start from 15th June, and our proposal is to complete it by 1st of August. Now if some students are more interested, 1 or 2 bonus tests also we can put, if particularly those students who are appearing in this year's mains exam. So basically in the test series we will be mainly focusing on how to write and what to write. So test series our focus will be what to write and how to write. This will be our focus in test series. As I told, in foundation course, we will be anyway focusing on this, but besides that we will also focus on the study material, that is what to study, then techniques how to study, then what to write, how to write. So continuously we will be focusing on PYQs and also the probable questions for next future exams. So again I would just want to repeat, foundation course we are starting from 11th of June and the test series we are starting from 15th of June. So interested students may contact and take further action. Now, as I told earlier, I am having 4 presentations, particularly detailed presentations, particularly with respect to detailed comprehensive strategy for ethics paper and also writing strategy for the ethics answers. So now let us go to that. So first we will go to the comprehensive strategy for ethics paper. What a student who is new to this whole subject, what he should do basically. Let us try to understand that. So, see, one thing we should understand, that this ethics paper is a very, very practical oriented paper. It's not some very philosophy paper, or it's not going to, you are not going to write in detail ethical theories or philosophical ideas. Basically, you have to apply the ethical theories in day-to-day administrative dilemmas, and accordingly you have to answer the questions. So, we should not think that we have to study very deep in ethics or philosophy to understand this ethics paper, and if you want to answer in a good manner. See, what civil servant qualities are required, that is mainly required for this. See, civil servant integrity, balance of judgment, empathy, sense of responsibility towards society. So all these qualities basically UPSC wants to test. So these qualities have to come out while answering various case studies or various theoretical questions of ethics paper. Now, first thing we should understand, as I told, what UPSC wants to test. So here I have written a few points. First is integrity in public life. Second, ethical decision making. Third, emotional maturity. Fourth, commitment to public service. Fifth, sensitivity towards people's problems. And so basically these qualities which UPSC wants to test, how in ethics paper these are relevant. This should be reflected in the answers which we are giving, particularly for the case studies, because case studies are actually the real dilemmas of administration, and theoretical questions also while answering theoretical questions. So Actually what UPSC wants? UPSC wants to know how would you think and act in such situations of ethical dilemmas. So once we understand this, it will be easy for us to prepare the ethics paper, because ethics paper, as we know, mainly focuses ethical concepts and practical case studies, mostly related with ethical dilemmas. Now second thing which students should understand is what is the structure of paper. Now structure, if we know, the paper has two parts, as I told, 250 marks total paper. First section A is basically 130 marks. There are 6 questions, 13 sub questions. Then we have 6 case studies, each of 20 marks each, 120 marks. So once we understand, and theoretical sections, as we know, there are 7 topics. Now these 7 topics is not only directly related with theoretical questions, but also related with various case studies. And I will just like to tell all of you, in most of the theoretical questions as well as case studies, it's intermingling or intermixing of various topics which are involved. It's not only single topic. So usually, very rarely, directly from one single topic a question comes. So usually questions, even in theoretical questions, also past trends we are seeing, it will be from 2 or more related topics. So as you know, the topics are ethics and human interface, attitude, aptitude and foundational values, emotional intelligence, very important topic, then contribution of moral thinkers and philosophers, then public service values, ethics in public administration, and last is probity in governance. So these are the 7 topics which are covered in the ethics syllabus. And the case studies as well as the conceptual questions do come from these 7 topics. Now third thing which students should do is begin with understanding the syllabus and previous year's question papers. So PYQs are very important, and syllabus also. So syllabus, already you know, a very small syllabus, but covering, one single topic covers a very, very large public domain. So practically those topics are quite vast actually, if you see. So you have to understand the syllabus, you have to understand previous year's questions, and this is not only for this paper but for all other papers also. This is very, very significant point. Now another very important thing I keep on telling to my students, keep your study sources limited. Don't think that more and more you will study or more books you will study, you are going to be better prepared. Yes, studying more and more is good, but then at some point of time UPSC requires focused study. So you have to at some point of time limit your study resources. I have named a few books which are standard books which you can go through. For example, Lexicon for Ethics, Neeraj Kumar, Subba Rao and Rai Chaudhary's ethics books for conceptual clarity. Then Ajmera and Nand Kishore Reddy's book for both theory and case studies. And then there are a few reports also which are very, very important, which you should go through. Second, Administrative Reforms Commission report which on ethics and governance, which is very, very useful. Then NCERT psychology textbooks of 11th and 12th, particularly understanding the emotional intelligence and attitude issues. Now, focus of a student should be for understanding the concepts. And in our class, which I have told that we will be taking for 2 months from 11th of this month, our main focus will be understanding of the concepts. Once you understand the concept, any kind of questions which is based on that concept, you will be able to answer. So this is very important. So understanding is quite important, and anyway ethics paper is practical paper. So unless you understand the concept and also understand how to apply those concepts in practical life of the administrator or civil servant, you will not be able to answer properly. So that will be our main focus in the classes. For example, 1 or 2 examples I have given. For example, integrity. Integrity is very, very important concept. Now, what can be the practical question, or what can be the understanding point of this? What does integrity mean in public administration? Because integrity means in a personal life also, public administration also. How does a civil servant demonstrate integrity in difficult situations? So, suppose there is a political pressure, or there is a some direction from the superior boss to do something wrong. Now, what a civil servant should do? How he should face those situations? What are the consequences when integrity is compromised? Suppose the integrity of some officer is compromised, so what will be the consequences? So all these things we will understand only when we understand the concept of, because only understanding the definition is not going to help. Similarly, if you take up emotional intelligence, another very, very important concept. Now, how it helps administrators in managing, let us say, stressful situations, deal with public grievances, handle conflicts within the organization. So, once you start thinking in that kind of way, the quality of your answers, whether it is of conceptual questions or case studies, will automatically improve. Now, another point which I keep on emphasizing in my classes, study moral thinkers and philosophers in a simple manner. So, as I told in the beginning itself, we need not, suppose Plato we have to study, or let us say Kant we have to study, Immanuel Kant. So, they were great philosophers and they have written a lot and they have given a number of philosophical theories. We are not concerned with all those theories. Even in my philosophy class also, I keep on telling, we have to keep our study limited to the syllabus, particularly focused on PYQs. So, we need not study the philosophers or thinkers in detail. We have to see how they are associated with ethics, or how their whole philosophy is associated with ethical ideas. So, that should be our main focus. So, they might have given a number of philosophical theories regarding metaphysics, regarding epistemology, regarding, so many other things, but we are main concerned with their ethical theories and particularly practical aspect of those ethical theories. So, therefore, we will be trying to study those moral thinkers and philosophers with a very, very focused approach. And that applies to both Western philosophers as well as Indian philosophers. Western philosophers, as you know, Kant, Hegel, Plato, Aristotle, all those guys are there. Then Indian philosophers, starting from, let us say, Gandhi, Vivekanand, Buddha, then Jainism, Bhagavad Gita. So all those things are there. So, but we have to study in a very, very focused manner. This is very, very important. See, building ethics vocabulary. See, how you can write good answer. When you use ethics vocabulary, ethical theories, ethical thinkers in your answer. Of course, it should not be superfluous, only required, what are the required, that only you should write. But then, unless you mention these, you will not be, or your answer will not get good marks. Similarly for case studies also. So, the focus should be to build ethics vocabulary which can be used while writing answers for conceptual questions as well as for case studies. So, I have written a few, but for every topic there will be an ethical vocabulary, and in the class definitely we will try to come out with some ethical vocabulary. We will try to provide that list to the students in our classes. Usually I keep on telling, either you have a physical notebook or you have a digital notebook. Topic wise important ethical terms and phrases or thinkers or theories should be noted, and again it should be revised, so that as and when required you remember and use that. Next is another very, very important thing is you have to use, for good answers and case studies, you have to use live examples, live administrative examples. There are a number of good officers or practical exponents of administration who have done good work. Their examples, whether it is from history or from current, you have to use. So, accordingly you have to prepare a list of those administrators, or they may be political administrators, they may be bureaucratic administrators, they may be national, they may be international. So, you can prepare and you can use in your answers. So, use of live administrative examples and references enhances the quality of answers, particularly for conceptual questions and also to some extent to case studies. Then practice makes man perfect. This everybody knows. So a student who practices case study as well as even conceptual questions writing again and again, definitely going to do better in actual exam. So in our class also we will be having more focus on practice. Almost we will try to have daily practice kind of thing. So this practice case studies as well as, I will say, even conceptual questions. Not only case studies, even conceptual questions regularly. Then another practice answer writing, this I have already covered, so I am not going to take up this again. Connect ethics with current affairs. Recent times, as I told, particularly 2025, 2024, 2023 exam papers, contemporary issues have been covered widely in case studies as well as in theoretical questions. So, while preparing also, you should while studying current affairs, you should try to study in some ethical angle also. So, for example, some examples I have given, if you can see, ethical challenges related to social media, corporate governance failures, conflict between development and environment, ethical issues in new technologies, whether it is for evaluation of answer sheets, whether it is of use of you can say other new technologies in exams. So, all those things you can keep in mind while going through the current affairs, because definitely case studies and conceptual questions are going to come related to those contemporary issues. And in our class as well as in our test series, we will definitely focus on these items. Revise regularly, this is very, very important, and this is not important only for this paper or this subject, but all others also. Particularly important definitions, thinkers and their ideas, administrative examples, key ethical values, etc. So, this is very, very important. So, finally, as I told, conceptual clarity, case study practice, real life examples, all these are very, very important, and other points also. So, in our class definitely we are going to cover all those, so that you are well prepared for exam either this year or even subsequent years. Now, we will go to second. Now, this is a comprehensive strategy, as I told. But as I told earlier also in the beginning, in 2025, some focus areas were very, very clear. So, just to understand those focus areas, I have analyzed 2025 exam paper, and let us see what were those focus areas, so that we are able to understand and prepare accordingly. So, how to prepare ethics GS4 paper after 2025 exam? What modulations one should do? What changes one should incorporate? Let us try to understand. See, these points are very, very clear in the paper. Clear understanding of ethical values, awareness of Indian moral traditions, because the focus on Indian moral traditions was quite high. Ability to analyze current issues ethically, this I have already told, so these were the focus items. Then balanced judgment in administrative dilemmas. Clear understanding of ethical values. So, only knowing the definition is not going to help. And more focus on Indian moral traditions. As you might have seen, Indian philosophers, a number of Indian thinkers and philosophers were asked in 2025. 2024 also, but 2025 number increased further. Current issues, as I told, contemporary issues connection was very, very significant observation, and a few very, very complex moral dilemmas were put before, particularly in case studies if you see. And in fact, my YouTube channel, if you see, I have already solved all those questions and case studies, given the model answer, so you can go there also and see. But the point is, those case studies and questions were putting forth quite complex and sensitive administrative dilemmas. So, this was basically the highlight of the 2025 exam. So, I am not going other details, just I have told what one or two more points I just would like to say, and then we will go to next presentation. Indian ethical, this let me repeat again. 2025 paper clearly shows that more importance is being given to ethical traditions of India or Indian moral traditions. So if you see, these thinkers were clearly asked there. Thiruvallur, Vivekanand, Mahavira. Earlier also a few Buddha was asked. So more and more focus is being given to Indian moral traditions. Then again, this also point I just want to repeat, linking of ethics with current affairs. So social media behavior, environmental decisions, welfare schemes, all these were available in 2025 exam paper. Corruption in governance, humanitarian issues at borders. So these were quite current affair oriented issues which were asked in the 2025 exam. Real life examples I have already told that we need to do it, so it's not very new to this paper, but that should be our. One more thing just I want to tell the students, avoid extreme answers. See, for example, if some problem is coming up, you have to find a solution. You have to manage the situation in an ethical manner. So you cannot go extreme or one extreme affecting adversely others. For example, what example I will give? For example, let us say encroachments have to be removed. Now, as per law, removal of encroachment is good and it should be done. But then, while removing the encroachment, you have to also take care of the poor people who are being affected, their livelihood is being affected. So, that also needs to be taken care. So, on the one hand, you have to follow the law. On the other hand, the empathy and compassion, which should be the qualities of a good administrator, that also should be reflected in your action. Another thing which 2025 exam paper focused was explaining ethical quotations, because a few quotations were given, quoted by some ethical thinker, moral thinker, philosopher, and students were asked to explain. So that we should learn, and anyway we will be practicing in the class this point also. After 2025 exam, a few focus areas, for example, focus on contemporary affairs, focus on Indian moral thinkers, focus on explaining various quotations, etc. So all those things also should be incorporated in test series as well as in the class studies. So that we will be doing. Now let us say we will go to answer writing techniques. How to write a good answer for Ethics GS4 or case study also. Because this is very important for particularly for cases, test series people. So because in test series, when I am going to evaluate the answer sheets, we will try to evaluate one by one, either physical or online, depending on the choice of the student. But I would like that this answer writing strategy student should follow, because then only he can fetch good marks. A few points we have already discussed, so in different presentations a few points definitely will be repeated one again and again, but that will be a good reminder also for the students. So now let us see what are the various points or various factors which we should consider for good answers writing strategy. See, first point is anchor your answers in ethical principles. Now, ethical principles can be Western or Indian, and a few ethical principles, for example, I have given here. But what I want to say is your answer, whether you are answering for conceptual questions, theoretical questions or case studies, it should be anchored in some ethical principle or moral theory which it is supporting. So, ethical reasoning and established moral principles needs to be quoted along with the thinkers and philosophers also. Now, we need not go in detail, because mentioning even in one line or two line, also one sentence or two sentences may be sufficient. So, we need not go in detail, but then mentioning is required for good answers. Now, what can be the various ethical frameworks? A few examples I have given, let us see that. For example, Western theory, ethical theories, if you take Kantian ethics, deontology is there. Now, Kant has given that duty for duty's sake. So, if my duty is to do something, I will not see any other thing, I will straightway do the duty. Now, one thing I just want to tell, each of these frameworks, ethical frameworks, have some positive points and some negative points also. So, for a balanced decision, ethical decision for an administrator, one ethical theory sometimes may not be sufficient. It has to be complemented by some other ethical theory also. So, that we should understand, that we will learn while writing various answers to case studies after studying in the classes. But that just I want to mention here, only one theory sometimes may not be sufficient. So, Kant has given deontology. Morality is based on duty and moral values. Then another important Western theory is utilitarianism, for which the main proponents were Bentham and Mill. Now, they have given, as you might have already known, maximum good for maximum people. That is the utilitarian theory. Now, Bentham and Mill, Bentham emphasized on quantitative aspect, Mill emphasized on qualitative aspect. Some happiness or some good qualitatively also is more important. So, I mean, those were the things. Then virtue ethics of Aristotle, which basically promotes the virtues in an administrator. Then we have justice theory of John Rawls. Now, if you take some, just for example, some Indian theories, because I just want to tell you, if you list out all these theories, they are more than 20. So, which we will be taking up in the class in detail. While test series, I will try to tell as much possible, but perhaps we will be more discussing in detail in the classes. So, but here I have given some examples. So, 3-4 examples from Western. Now, let us have 3-4 examples from Indian. One is very, very important, Niskam Karma from Bhagavad Gita, that you don't aspire for any fruit or any result, you keep on doing your work. Now, sometimes this Niskam Karma from Bhagavad Gita resembles the deontology of Kant, Immanuel Kant also. So, that also we should understand. Buddhist ethics of compassion, moderation and avoidance of extreme, middle path. Then Gandhian ethics of truth and non-violence, Satyagraha. Then Chanakya's administrative ethics. So, basically all these examples very briefly, or the ethical theories briefly, wherever applicable, needs to be quoted. This is example from the perspective of Niskam Karma. In the Bhagavad Gita, a civil servant should perform duties selflessly without seeking personal benefit. So, even without mentioning this Niskam Karma Bhagavad Gita, also this sentence could have been written. But once you write this, perhaps your answer will be elevated and you are going to get better marks. Now, second point which I want to say is use language of ethics. And in fact, if you remember, before this presentation I told we have to use ethical terms and terminology, phrases, for which we have to prepare some notebook topic wise. So, first point, use ethical theories, ethical thinkers. Second point, use ethical terminology while answering conceptual questions as well as case studies. For example, some keywords, if you see integrity, objectivity, accountability, transparency, compassion, empathy, justice, neutrality, probity, moral courage. So, all these are various ethical terms which needs to be used while answering. One example, let us say how it can be used. Let us say first sentence, a civil servant should be honest. Now, this is what has been written. A civil servant should be honest. Now, same thing can be written a little differently also. How? A civil servant must demonstrate integrity and uphold public trust through transparent decision making. So, this and this sentence almost means same thing. But if you see, second one is using ethical terminology. So, this is what I mean. While answering, you have to use various ethical terminology. Third point is, to the extent possible, maintain a clear structure of your answers. Now, what can be the structure? Now, this we call ideal model. Now, what is that model? First is introduction, then dimensions, then ethical analysis, application and logical conclusion. So, if you maintain this model to the extent possible, because in some of the answers introduction may not be possible, because very briefly we can write or we may not write also, but then other things are anyway required. Wherever little longer answers are there, introduction needs to be written. Sometimes introduction also needs to be written in a way that directly it hits the question. So that all those things we will practice in test series as well and in the classes also. So this ideal model can be followed while writing the answers. This is one suggestion. Another, write a clear definition based introduction, because sometimes if you write definition based introduction, you are not wasting number of words. As you know, theoretical questions are 150 words. So if you write a longer introduction, you are wasting unnecessary number of words and it's not going to help much. So definition based introduction is quite important. I have already told incorporate ethical theories. Now this is again very important. Incorporate thinkers and various reports. So as I told, Administrative Reforms Commission report is there. Then from UK, Nolan Committee report is there. So these reports particularly relate to ethics in administration. So while answering, these reports wherever appropriate should be incorporated. Similarly, ethical thinkers also from Western world as well as from Indian also. So if you see Kant, Aristotle, Bentham, Mill and Rawls etc. from Western world, and Gandhi, Vivekananda, Buddha, Chanakya, Mahavira etc. from Indian scenario. So these thinkers also can be incorporated depending on requirement of the answers. As I told, important administrative references, whether it is ARC report, whether it is Nolan Committee report, all those things can be written. Nolan Committee report particularly identifies 7 principles of public life. So this I have written here just to give an example, but in detail we will take up in the class. Second Administrative Reform Commission emphasized on values such as integrity, transparency, accountability, etc. in governance. So this also we should know. Now these examples are definitely going to enrich the answers. So mention of these references needs to be done. Use diagrams, flowcharts, tables, etc. wherever possible, because in ethics paper I don't think there is much scope for this, because I consider small paragraph wise answer changing from one idea to other is quite good for 150 words, but wherever possible, sometimes in case studies these things may be possible, so you can do that. For example, 1 or 2 examples I have taken up, so just I have to explain. For example, ethical decision making. Now this making it, what is ethical problem? Identify stakeholders, identify ethical values, evaluate options, choose most appropriate ethical decision. So this can be the flow chart. Similarly, differentiations also. For example, the differences between utilitarianism and deontology. So for example, utilitarianism focuses on greatest good of greatest number, deontology focuses on outcomes and moral values. So basically these kind of differentiations you can, small table you can make if required. This point earlier also I have told, present balanced arguments. You don't go for extreme arguments. Now what can be the balanced argument? For example, one example I have given just to explain what can be the balanced argument. On the one hand, strict enforcement of rules ensures administrative discipline and accountability. On the other hand, excessive rigidity may ignore humanitarian considerations. So this is balanced picture. We are not focusing only on legal or rule implementation. We are also seeing the humanitarian considerations with compassion and empathy. So this is also again very, very important. So our arguments in ethical paper or ethics paper should be a very, very balanced one. We cannot be one-sided, particularly when the issue is of weaker sections, of downtrodden. We have to be compassionate enough or empathetical enough to support their cause. So this is what is meaning of this. Because balanced answers reflect ethical maturity and practical wisdom. So this is what I meant actually. This point I have covered earlier also using real life examples, but only one caution I want to give to all the students. There may be some controversial examples. Please do not use them because you are risking then your answer. So universally accepted good administrative examples only you should use. For that in the class definitely we will try to prepare a list, but from your side also you should be very, very careful that controversial examples if you use, maybe you are risking the answer. One example I have given, Satyendra Dubey, who displayed moral courage by exposing corruption in Golden Quadrilateral project, and he was killed actually basically. Another Armstrong Palme, then T.N. Seshan, Vinod Rai, etc. So some we have given, but we can prepare a list which is non-controversial, and we can international, if you E. Sridharan you can see, then international examples if you take Nelson Mandela. So these kind of examples can be quoted. Now we'll just have a strategy for theoretical question and strategy for case study. So strategy for theoretical question should be, because their conceptual clarity is required, so your answer should include definition, explanation of idea, ethical significance, relevance in governance, example or application. So these points, as I earlier also told, ideal example. So definition of the concept, explanation of the idea, ethical significance, relevance in governance, and example or application. For a theoretical question, these are very, very important, and this should be included. For case studies, what one should do? Now, case studies, anyway, detailed thing we will study in the class, but here very briefly I have captured. For example, identify the ethical dilemma. This should be step 1. Step 1 is identifying the ethical dilemma. Step 2 is identify the stakeholders. Step 3 is identify the ethical principle which is applicable there. And then we will go to next step. Step 4 is basically evaluate various options. And step 5 will be choose the most ethical option justifying decision based on ethical reasoning. And step 6 should be suggest implementation steps. So these 6 steps if you follow, you can answer any case study in a very, very systematic manner. So this is a very briefly, just I have touched it, we will take up in next classes. This is a word of caution to those students who want to study very deep. Avoid philosophizing, because this is not a philosophy paper, and even in philosophy paper also I give a word of caution because I teach philosophy also. But the point here is, for ethics anyway you don't need to. Your answer should be simple, practical, connected to governance. Too much philosophical jargon can make answers unnecessarily complicated. Focus on ethical values and administrative relevance. This is very, very important. Use ethically sensitive tone. Now this also is linked in a way to balanced answer. So your conclusion should be balanced, your answer should be balanced, but your tone should be ethically sensitive. Some examples I have given: fostering trust in governance, ensuring equitable justice, protecting vulnerable sections, demonstrating moral courage. So these basically are various, if you see, various ethically sensitive tone phrases you can say. Now this kind of language reflects ethical awareness and administrative maturity, which should be done. Then your conclusion should be positive one and visionary, forward looking conclusion. You cannot in ethics paper give a negative kind of conclusion. So conclusion is very, very important, and it should be positive, it should be visionary, it should be forward looking. And it should not be generic. So for example, generic statement can be, let me explain this very briefly. For example, generic statement which needs to be avoided is ethics is important for society. So suppose this statement you want to conclude. Now this one should, instead of this, what can be written? Let me explain now as example. For example, empathy humanizes governance and enables civil servants to understand the lived reality of citizens. By integrating empathy with integrity and accountability, public administration can promote inclusive and trustworthy governance. So basically, what I mean to say is, it should be positive, forward looking. It cannot be a very, very routine kind of conclusion. Now, conclusion also can be connected with constitutional values, because Indian Constitution has justice, equality, fraternity, and justice also social, political, economic, etc. So, these values, constitutional morality we say, you can connect with that, you can connect with Gandhian ideals, you can connect with public service values. 7, 8 very, very important values are there, for example, integrity, transparency, probity, all those, so you can connect to them. So, final ethical clarity should be there, balanced reasoning should be there, administrative practicality, because ethics paper is a practical paper. So, propose the solutions that are realistic and implementable, because here we don't want some kind of a philosophy or philosopher. We want administrators who can see the things practically with ethical lens. So, till now I have explained basically how to start preparation for ethics paper, then what should happen, what changes one should bring in the preparation strategy after particularly last year's exam paper, then how one should attempt to write good answers for theoretical questions as well as case studies. Now, writing thing we will anyway take care of in the test series also. In the foundation class we will take care of all the things including writing. Now, last just I want to tell you what an examiner expects from a student while evaluating the answer sheets, and particularly for test series students I want to tell these things I will be seeing if you are with me in the test series. So, from student side I have already explained what a student should write, but from examiner point of view, from my point of view, I just want to explain examiner's point of view as far as the evaluation of answer sheets is concerned. So, this is also very, very important, because once you know that, perhaps your answer can match the expectation of the examiner. So, now let us see what is that. See, this is examiner's perspective. Examiner's checklist for evaluating answer sheets. This is what I want to explain. Most of you may be knowing how an examiner evaluates the answer sheets. I don't know whether you are aware, for one question how much time one examiner devotes. You should try to think that. But definitely the examiner who is going to evaluate your answer sheet in actual exam is not having unlimited time. He is not going to read word by word and try to understand what kind of student you are, what kind of answer you have written, and what kind of marks you should be awarded. So, he will be definitely not doing all those things. What he will be doing actually, let us try to understand. Because examiner often spends less than 1 minute on each answer initially, and maybe 2 to 3 minutes whole. So, suppose your ethics paper has 13 parts for part A and 12 in part B. So, for all these 25, he is not going to spend more than, let us say, half an hour. So, 1 minute or 1.5 minutes for each answer. That is what examiner is going to spend, 30 to 35 or maximum 40 minutes. So, it will not be more than 2 minutes. Now, how he divides this 1.5 minute or 2 minutes, let us try to understand that. And particularly, this is important for the students, because while writing even practice answers, you should try to think like this. See, your answer should quickly communicate three things. This is very important. First is clarity, second is structure, and third is ethical maturity. And in first few seconds, if examiner is able to understand that these things are there, then he will read the answer, try to understand, and then only he will proceed further. Otherwise, he will award below average marks and proceed. So, we will go step by step just to understand. See, first phase for an examiner is visual clarity and presentation. This is first phase, and for which each answer he will give 3 to 5 seconds or maximum 10 seconds. What he will do in this 3 to 5 seconds? He will see, is the handwriting neat and readable throughout the answer? This is first point. Is the answer visually structured with short paragraphs? This is second point. So, first is handwriting, whether it is legible. Second, whether it is structure of the answer, whether short paragraphs are there, and bullet points wherever appropriate, small headings if required. And I will add another thing here, whether important phrases are underlined. Underlining. So, this is also important. Then another point he will try to see, is the length appropriate? Whether the number of words, word limits directive has been complied with. And as you know, in 10 marks for UP ethics paper, 150 words, 20 markers, case studies, 250 word limit is there. So, he will broadly see that also. Then I already told, another important feature is visibility of ethical vocabulary, and this visibility is only when you underline it properly. So, you write ethical vocabulary or references or ethical thinkers and you underline it. I have already covered. So, it will be visible very clearly to the examiner. Should ideally be underlined, all these phrases etc. wherever you use are clearly visible early in the answer. So, if an answer appears clean, structured and readable. So, this is very important. If an answer appears clean, structured and readable, examiner thinks the candidate has organized thinking worth reading carefully. And other side, if you see, if the answer looks crowded or messy, the examiner may unconsciously assume average quality and skim the answer quickly and may award below average marks. Now, second thing which or phase 2 of evaluation, if you can say. Phase 1 is visual. Phase 2 is directive compliance and question focus. This is very, very important again. What has been asked, because some students have habit. Suppose they have studied some topic, probity. Now, anything is asked from probity, he will write everything which he knows. So, that is not going to fetch you any marks. We should try to understand what has been asked from that topic, and then we should try to answer. Another drawback, because I have seen while evaluating earlier answer sheets, suppose there are two parts of the question. Now, one part students elaborately write, other part very briefly, small paragraph they will write. Now, you are not going to get good marks, because your answer has to be balanced. If there are 2 parts or 3 parts, both parts should be covered adequately. Now, this is very, very important. So, here same thing, whether the examiner checks whether the candidate understood the question properly. Is the directive followed correctly? For example, there are some directives examples I have given, but this we will discuss in the class subsequently. For example, directive can be explain Now explain means clear conceptual explanation should be given there. Now if directive is, let us say, evaluate. So here evaluation means both strength and limitations has to be given, and finally conclusion also needs to be given. Discussed, balanced analysis needs to be given. Illustrate, if directive is illustrate, it means you have to give examples to illustrate that. Now many candidates, they ignore these directives. Then second, are all parts of the question addressed? I told earlier itself, if there are 2 parts, 3 parts of the question, each part needs to be answered adequately, properly. So for question having 2 or 3 components, the examiner expects each part to be addressed clearly, roughly proportionate coverage should be given. Then third thing which we will see, is the answer focused on the ethical dimension, because this is ethics paper, so ethical dimension needs to come out, because it's not a very essay kind of question, it's a practical paper, and very brief answers needs to be given. So ethical dimension needs to come out. This is a very brief example, but I am not going in that, but because once you understand the concept, you will be able. Now third phase of evaluation. So first phase visual, second phase directive, third phase ethical clarity, depth and practical reasoning. For this maximum time he will give examiner if he reaches to third stage, roughly about 30 to 40 seconds, 15 to 40 seconds I have written. Now this is core evaluation stage, this is the main evaluation stage, and this will decide whether the student gets 140 plus or he remains somewhere between 100 to 125 or even below 100 also, because most of the students they hover around 100. Maximum students, if you will see in ethics paper, they get around 100 marks. So this third stage, core evaluation stage, this will decide basically whether a student will get 140 plus or not. And this here it is evaluated whether the student or answer has ethical clarity, depth and practical reasoning. For theoretical questions, the examiner looks for the following elements. Now let us see what are those elements. Conceptual clarity, because the terms have to be clearly understood. Use of relevant examples. This we have already discussed, as I told earlier also, a number of points will repeatedly in different presentations will come, but this is a good reminder also for the students so that they can understand very clearly what they need to write and how they need to write. So use of relevant examples, I told live administrative examples one should give with practical understanding. Then administrative relevance, how it is related to administration. Then ethical and constitutional anchoring, whether the ethical thinkers, moral thinkers and the ethical values have been quoted properly. Relevant ethical thinkers, relevant. Unnecessary if you quote, you are going to again not get good marks. So relevant ethical thinkers and are quoted properly. Now for case studies, so those were for theoretical question, but for case studies what an examiner will try to understand whether ethical dilemma has been identified correctly. This is first point. Second, whether the stakeholders and values have been mapped correctly. So mapping of stakeholders and values. Third, whether various options available have been considered properly, because evaluated properly. What are the pros and cons of various options available? And then some justified conclusion or decision has been reached based on some appropriate ethical reasoning. So these are the points which you would like to see in case studies. Now next and last stage, because actual evaluation has been done, but these are bonus marks one student can get. Maybe he can cross 150 also if these points are visible to the examiners. What is that? Emotional intelligence and ethical sensitivity. In earlier points also I was telling the same thing. When you are dealing with downtrodden, weaker sections, genders, weaker genders, environment, so you have to be sensitive to the needs of this generation, future generation, women, weaker sections, SC, ST. So if emotional intelligence and ethical sensitivity is visible in your answers, you are going to get bonus marks. So this finally examiner observes the tone and value of orientation of the answer, and they look for signs of empathy and human sensitivity. This is what I was telling, empathy and human sensitivity, especially in situations involving poor or vulnerable citizens, disaster victims, marginalized groups. So this thing, if included in the answer, you are going to get bonus marks. And second point, balance between law, compassion and practicality. Because sometimes while implementing law, we forget the empathy and compassion issue. So if you are having a balanced thing, you are going to get better marks. And last is reflective and constructive tone should be there. It should not be preachy, but it should be reflective and constructive positive tone. And then conclusion should be ethical conclusion. A strong conclusion often includes a guiding principle, a constitutional value, or Gandhian insight. So all these make it important. For example, one example let me tell. Ultimately, ethical governance requires balancing legality with compassion so that administrative authority strengthens public trust rather than undermines it. So this is a good example of concluding remarks of some case study or some answer you can understand. Now what is final thing? So after these 4 stages, what examiner will do? He will think now balanced and now different categories he will form. First category is balanced and ethically mature, in which he understands that there is a clear structure of answer, clear ethical reasoning is there, administrative relevance has been quoted properly, reflective conclusion is there. So this kind of answer is balanced and ethically mature, and they may get 130 plus I have written, but they may get 140 plus also. So this is first category answer. Now second category answer, decent but generic. So this will get about 100 and plus, and then last category will be below 100, 75 to 100 you can say, superficial or imbalanced. So superficial or imbalanced will get about 75 plus you can say. So this is what an examiner actually thinks and evaluates. So basically, if you were with me, today what we have discussed is, we have discussed what process we are going to follow in our classes and test series. As I told earlier, test series we are going to start from 15th of this month, classes we are going to start from 11th. Definitely classes we are going to teach what to study, how to study, and what to write, how a good answer can be written, we will have continuous practice. In test series, definitely the more focus will be on the writing. As I have already told earlier, there will be 4 sectional tests and 4 full length tests. The classes will be for about 2 months, and the classes will automatically include the this test series also. So please do inquire and try to join as many students as possible, so that we can start the or more and more students can benefit. So this is what I have to say today. Now thank you for joining in the class. We will meet very soon in test series as well as in the physical and online classes. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you.